Inside the Birds is back. What's up, everybody? It's Geoff Mosher, Adam Caplan for our first off-season Inside the Birds podcast. We are going to wrap up a little bit of the Eagles losing in the Super Bowl, 38-35. I know just saying that makes a lot of people cringe. It happened. We'll get into it. We'll do our normal all 22, but we've got no time to waste, right, Adam? The offseason hit everybody over the head just about 48 hours later because already the Eagles are down 2 coordinators and and then the combine's in 2 weeks. So
crazy
just gets right on going.
Yeah, today's Thursday. This starts our off-season schedule. Every Monday morning and Thursday morning at 6 a.m. Eastern, we will drop our shows. Our first free agency show this Monday. I mean, this I cannot wait. I mean, we're into it, as you just said. And the week after that, we head to the combine to do combine shows. But we got a pretty cool announcement that's coming for free agency. It starts next week.
That's right. So obviously, as Adam just mentioned, we're going to go to our off-season schedule of 2 podcasts per week on Monday and Thursday. Q&A, there's going to be one final Q&A. It'll be out, I think, Friday morning. Yeah, Friday morning.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Friday. Right. Tomorrow. They'll finish it up. They'll take a little bit of a break like they usually do. And then, I'm sure they'll be back at some point in a few weeks after that or whatever. And then, just like we did last year, we're going to have season 2 of the Intel with Greg Cosell, which we're really excited about. It's going to be another 10-week series. Well, the first few weeks will focus on free agency. And then the last half of it will focus on NFL draft prospects and the NFL draft. So that will start now. Next Wednesday will be the first episode of the Intel with Greg Cosell. Look forward to that. And then we've also got some other off-season stuff in the works that we'll get to you as soon as it materializes. We did something last year with Andrew DeCecco and some draft prospects, draft diaries, which I really enjoyed. I thought he did a great job. We will try to do that again. And, stay tuned. We'll let you know everything as it materializes. The one thing I want to say is thanks to everybody for all the great feedback and accolades that we got while we were out in Arizona. We had a ton of people reach out to tell us that they really enjoyed our interviews, people that we met all throughout there that say they listen to Inside the Birds. A lot of just people just reaching out and thanking us in general. We thank you. I mean, the listeners are what makes Inside the Birds happen. So we're happy to do it, and we're especially happy when we get to meet some of the people out in public and interact with them. It's fantastic. I don't know if I mentioned this last pod, Adam, but before we left for Arizona, I was driving. Did I mention how a police officer had me roll down the window? I was driving in South Jersey in Lindenwold area, and I was like, "Uh-oh, what did I do?"
Exactly.
But all he wanted to do was tell us that he loved our podcast. So,
it's awesome. Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yep.
I mean, so what happened with Geoff and I in Arizona is that Ron Jaworski's party, easily a dozen, right? People stopped us.
Yes, many.
It was really cool. I met David Garrard there. It was pretty cool. He and I talked about Jalen Hurts a little bit in the team, but he loves Doug Peterson. Oh my gosh. Yeah. He just said how he's transformed everything. But so getting back, so this cop. So wait, was he?
I was at a red light, and he was next to me in the other lane at the same red light, and I just happened to look over, and I noticed he was motioning to me.
Yeah,
and I was like, "What did I do?" And
exactly.
So I rolled my window down. He rolls his down, and he goes, "Hey, I love your podcast." And I said, "Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it." It was in Lindenwold, New Jersey. That's where I was driving through at the time. So big shout out to that officer. I couldn't get his name. The light turned green. So shout out to them and Lindenwold Police crew. Appreciate that.
Very cool.
If anybody hasn't caught them yet, we had some amazing interviews at the Super Bowl that weren't necessarily about the Super Bowl. So they'll be evergreen. Our interviews with Ryan Leaf and what he's been through in his life. Jim McMahon, same thing, had some former Eagles quarterback, but also former Super Bowl champion quarterback for the Bears. Dr. David Chow was really good. TJ Houshmandzadeh, Torrey Smith, Clay Harbor, Jeff Schwartz. I mean, some of those were about the Super Bowl, but also about just the NFL and things going on there. And I would advise anybody to go back and check them out if they missed it. So, because there were some really, really good interviews there. Oh, Marcus Smith, former
Oh
Eagles
yeah.
first round
Oh,
pick.
I
Great
haven't.
one.
You and Andrew. I heard that it's an amazing interview. I have to. And then we had someone reach out, said that they were so blown away by the Leaf interview they went back and watched it twice. So yeah, it definitely got to me. Ryan's story. Ryan got very emotional, and it definitely tugged at my heartstrings. Some of the stuff he talked about, and Jim McMahon, for all the issues he's had with his memory, he remembered. For those of you over 40, maybe 50, you might remember all the quarterbacks that when Jim was with the Eagles. Might remember Pat Ryan, of course, off the construction site. Brad Gable, you might
Yep.
remember him. I
Oh
totally
yeah.
forgot him, and Jim remembered him. It was quite the. Then his story about the Super Bowl with Chicago, and I totally forgot this. I saw it in 30 for 30, and
Yep.
it's actually a pretty serious situation, which we all laughed at because what McMahon was accused of saying, and I mean, I don't want to give it away. It was just a phenomenal interview, and he was wonderful. And I'm so glad we had him on. It was a lot of fun, and he's doing the best he can with his physical condition. It's he's struggling a little bit, but it was great to talk to him.
Yeah, it was absolutely fantastic to catch up with him, and I enjoyed the interview. So shout out to Jim McMahon. And there again, it's all available. It's been podcasted. It's on our YouTube platform. So you have two different areas where you can go and listen if you haven't had a chance yet. And I was really happy we were able to get a couple extra pods, really good ones. One with former Falcons GM Thomas Dimitroff, and one with Jason Kelsey and Travis Kelsey's father, Ed Kelsey. We were able to get that done for our Patreon subscribers. We also did an Ask ITB live stream while we were out there for our Patreon subscribers. So anybody, and we've had a flood of new ones lately. So I hope they're enjoying the content. If you're not signed up, it's patreon.com/inside the birds. And we're trying to make it well worth your subscription.
By the way, two things. Ed Kelsey, this craziest thing is I never met the guy before, and he starts reciting some of the stuff like we've done before. Like he knows Philadelphia media really well. In fact, he's like one of the marketing people for the Kelseys said, "Oh, he knows all about you guys." I'm like,
Yeah,
"What?"
I was like, oh, really? At first, I was like, is
Exactly. I
that
said,
good or
"Oh,
bad?
exactly." You never know with us, like with people like, "Oh, when you said this, I don't believe you said that. I don't
Right,
agree with you. What are we going to say?" Okay, I can
right.
only start. But he was wonderful, hilarious, good storytelling. And also another Patreon. We're doing the chats every Wednesday. We had the chat last night at 8:15, but we're going to do them at the combine. We're going to do them all year, and we'll make some announcements. You'll get some also content announcements. You'll get them before we put them on the pod the next day.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of an advantage that you get of many things that we do on Patreon. So we appreciate your patronage. We got a bunch of signups last week, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Appreciate their Patreonage, I guess is what we'll say.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right. Good stuff. All right, listen, we'll get to the game wrap up in a second, but we want to address some of the more pertinent stuff first as far as what's going on here in the offseason. The Eagles lost both of their coordinators. They lost Shane Steichen, who becomes the second straight offensive coordinator poached by the Indianapolis Colts for their head coach, following in the footsteps of Frank Reich. He had a really emotional interview too. I thought it was, he really
Good.
showed. We'll talk a little bit about why these guys were so respected by the Eagles. But he showed a real human side in that. And then of course Jonathan Gannon, which that one came out of nowhere. Like it's not that people didn't wonder if the Cardinals needed a head coach or taking a while. Jonathan Gannon was a candidate, but the way that came about was certainly more abrupt than all parties were going to realize. And then next thing you know, he stays out there and he's the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. That was a little crazy.
That what you just said about him, he didn't have to leave. They'll never admit this, but it just why wouldn't you interview him? And I had heard from a couple coaching agents. One guy said Gannon's getting that job. I'm like, how do you know this? Because he's going to interview well, and he's no offense to Anarumo and the other guy who interviewed, because he's just a better candidate.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, someone who knows Gannon really well said he'll be a better head coach than defense coordinator. I didn't know how to respond to that.
No, it
You
makes a
never
lot
know
of
that.
sense. I think after talking to a lot of people around the league in the last few days, it makes a lot of sense. First of all, I think everybody needs to remember, you can blame who you want for it. We're not going to tell you anymore. We've given our opinion on the whole situation, but Jonathan Gannon has been a defensive coordinator for all of 2 years in the NFL. 2 years. So did he get out coached by Andy Reid? Yes. Are you upset about it? Of course. Is this guy, Jim Schwartz, when he was in the Super Bowl, was like, what, 10, 12 years in as a defensive coordinator?
He got
So,
crushed.
yeah.
Crushed.
Yeah.
Crushed.
I know.
Over 500 yards passing.
Yeah. I mean, it's look, the reality is he didn't do a great job, but he's, to your point, Adam, and to what we've talked with certain people around the league about, is that, and I think this goes for him and Shane Steichen, why they are so adored inside the NovaCare complex is because, as it was put to me, these two guys do a really good job coaching nowadays player, communicating the message, letting the players know that it's all about them. They are the best at what they do. These guys are constant, high energy guys who constantly tell the players, A, what's expected of them, and B, why they're expected to excel because they are the best players in that room all the time. And the coaches do a great job of conveying that they have confidence in them to pull off whatever the scheme is. And the players really like them. I know that Gannon's taking a beating right now, but that group, we can tell you the players enjoyed playing for them. And if you have players that don't like the head coach, go look at like the Lions with Matt Patricia or other teams where you can tell there's a big disconnect between the personnel and the coaching staff. That's the worst situation you can have. This was not that. This was a coaching staff that really had the finger on its pulse of the players. And that's not easy when you have a 53 that is as good as the Eagles had.
But before we get to Steichen, let me just say one thing about Gannon. If you ever hear Hassan Reddick loves Gannon. He credits him for this amazing breakout season. I know we'll get to what the tape looked like. We got some interesting stuff. It really tells you once again what you think you saw on TV was not what really happened.
Yes,
we're gonna tease you with that. We'll get to that later. But Reddick just said he goes, "Hey, what do you want? Like, what does this work for you?" And he's a great listener, and he responds, "Yes, he wanted to run the Fangio system. That was not going to change." But he understood the best way to ask Reddick to play was stand him up and let him go. Yes, he had to be in coverage. Every stand-up outside linebacker is going to play a little bit in coverage at some point. But Gannon's usage of him was the reason why he's been so dominant and so special. Not in this game, but the reasons for it. But overall, when we'll get to what the tape looked like, it wasn't nearly as bad as I thought. Because watching the game, I was like everyone else. I mean, could you press a little bit? Could you get up there? Or they actually did. I didn't know that.
Yep.
But the fact of the matter is, he did a good job. I don't think he's as good as maybe he might be in year 3 had he been here.
Right.
But he obviously improved. The talent level was phenomenal around him. Got to give the general manager credit. But I do appreciate some of the stuff of some of the fans said. Obviously, some fans were just they hate him. There's nothing you can do to get them to change their mind. They're entitled to feel that way. But I saw some really smart takes that some fans who really get it know that there was without Jonathan Gannon, they're just not in the Super Bowl. Like it's almost like, okay, some people are like, okay, wait a minute, how could you say that? They have a great roster. So you're telling me that the coaches coach themselves? I mean, the players could coach themselves. Roll the ball, let them coach themselves. They could just put together their own scheme.
Right.
I think sometimes we get carried away with the hate, but we also, for those of you who've been with us for 2 years, we crushed them last year when it was kind of over the top. I felt kind of bad about it, but it's what we saw and what we were told, and how easy the defense was to beat. And Andy Reid had to do something different because he knew one thing: they play a specific way. They got what they thought they'd get, and Andy changed it up, and that's the mark of a great coach.
Yeah. So, a league source who's very familiar with the Eagles and the Chiefs and the game and how it went, basically summarized Gannon like this to me. He knows Gannon very well and what he's accomplished and what he's done. He says, and by the way, we get this from a lot of people. A lot of people out there in Arizona we spoke to think Gannon's a good coach, despite what you might think of him. All right. They think he's a good coach, but what stood out to me is that he said is that the one thing that he struggles at, it's not making adjustments. He will adjust, and we'll get into how he did adjust. But when he's asked to make adjustments, he's not as good yet at when you have to come out of your comfort zone and do some different things at doing those things correctly, making those right calls, having the right feel. All right, you got to adjust. You have to blitz more. You have to do this. Then it's calling the right blitz. Or then how much do I have to adjust? And again, second year as a play caller. I mean, we said all this stuff about Andy Reid earlier. Bad clock management. Stewart doesn't get to play. I mean, Andy Reid wound up being a legendary coach. I don't know that Jonathan Gannon is, but my point is to expect Jonathan Gannon to be a wizard in his second year of doing it against Andy Reid, I think was a little bit unfair. And I'm just telling you what the league thinks of him. They think he's a good coach. They know he has issues. There's no one that's going to argue with you when you bring up the fact that good quarterbacks know what they want to do against Jonathan Gannon's scheme. That is something Gannon will have to work on in Arizona. And 5 or 6 years from now, we might be saying, hey, he's gotten a lot better at that, like we do almost every coach or player most of the time. But clearly that is an area that and sort of in-game adjustments and a feel for what to do when you have to adjust hurt them in the Super Bowl. Adam and I aren't going to argue with that. That's true. But again, you can go to the Super Bowl and find 4 or 5 other things that went on that were not Jonathan Gannon's fault, that were equally responsible for why the Eagles lost.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely made some adjustments, but I think sometimes, and I think it's a valid criticism, he sometimes waits too long.
Yep.
And the Dallas game was just a bad. He did not coach well that game. This is the game in Dallas. They just got crushed. They got crushed. Lost Maddox in that game, but that's no excuse. He just didn't coach well.
Right.
But here's this. I'll tell you the best game I thought he coached was week 2. I know it was week 2, but where they shut Jefferson down. It was like everything he dialed up. You talked about sometimes like he adjusts, but it's the wrong adjustment. Everything he did, and the zero blitz that he ran against the Chiefs, he ran the same one in the red zone against Minnesota. When we were shocked he'd never done that before, and boy, did he got Cousins. Cousins turned his body.
Yep.
But
did a hell of a job against Jacksonville too. I mean, Jacksonville wound up putting it together by the end of the year, and after the first quarter, and really Jacksonville got a defensive touchdown, so it wasn't like all those points came. Right? Didn't they have an interception return?
Game?
Yeah.
The rain game?
Yeah, they were pretty good that game defensively, weren't they?
I don't remember. I just remember it was a terrible game because of the rain. But they got off the bad start. Didn't the Eagles get down like really bad early?
They were down 14-0, but one of those touchdowns was a defense. I think the interception was returned for a touchdown, if I'm not mistaken. Or it was one of those things where it was returned so close, just like the punt return. In the Super Bowl. I'm sorry, but the 85 Bears aren't stopping the Chiefs from scoring.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't have a problem with that one. I just my issue. The reason why I will not call him anything better than a good defense coordinator is because and it goes to your point. Maybe in year 3, had he still been here, he takes that next jump, becomes very good. He learns to adjust a little sooner, or more importantly, because we don't talk about this. We didn't talk about this enough. He's done as the D coordinator, but it's making the right adjustment. You made such a phenomenal point because we rarely talked about that. It's not that he won't adjust. Yes, there are times he's been slow to adjust, but when he does sometimes, it's not that he didn't make the right decision.
Right.
It's because he doesn't have the experience.
Right. He gets uncomfortable. Right. He has a comfort zone.
Just telling you what it is.
Yeah. He has a comfort zone. You get him out of it, he gets squirmy. There's no denying.
And Schwartz is another guy, okay, with a wide 9 and not blitzing. It would drive people crazy, certain people around the league. I'm sure the Eagles would tell you. I'm sure I mean, how could they not? Because he just refused to blitz, and he says you can't do this. It's risky and all this stuff. But the guy was a defensive coordinator for many years and widely recognized as one of the better ones. No matter how much you criticize the guy, none of them are going to be perfect. That's just the way it is.
That is fair. All right, so let's go back to offense. So Shane Steichen is now gone, and they need an offensive coordinator. Now, the sense we're getting is that it's going to be Brian Johnson. I know you had reported that there were other teams interested in Brian Johnson. So that's why. Go ahead.
Yeah, in fact, what happened was, the reason why I put this out on Sunday, that he was going to be the D coordinator, OC, Brian Johnson, promoted from quarterbacks coach. Multiple teams I spoke with said that they were told not to put the slip in because Johnson would not be available, which means he was going to get promoted to OC.
Right.
So now here's what we don't know. And it's Thursday morning. We don't know who's going to call the plays. This is interesting because he did call the plays at U of F. We had heard mixed results from people who around the league evaluated it. He caught Coach Kyle Pitts. It didn't hurt him, but it's a little subjective because when I asked, I'm like, well, what were you looking for? He goes, just taking one of the people I spoke with said he was just taking an overview of going through a bunch of games of Florida's offense when this guy was scouting. He goes, all right, this looks like. He just said the problem is because it's college football that you're not running true NFL offense, though, of course, some of the stuff transfers for what the Eagles are doing.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody knows how close, I'm sure they know, how close Johnson and Hurts are. They've known each other for several years, going back to when Jalen was in high school for that. So, and then the guy probably will move up, Mr. Trick Shot artist, Alex Tanney. He's the assistant quarterback's coach, offensive assistant.
We hear good things about him, by the way.
They love him. Yeah, he's a big kid. He must have been on like 10 NFL teams, on practice squad and so forth. But this is a guy, I'm not sure who found him. I'm not sure. I don't know who they knew. I remember when we reported they were going to hire him. I don't know who knew him, but this is a guy this is another up and comer. The Eagles are really good at this, finding these people. Kudos to, it's technically Sirianni's call to hire him, but maybe this was a suggestion. I don't know if he knew Alex Tanney, but this is an interesting guy. They could do Kevin Patullo, Sirianni's right-hand man. He could be the quarterback's coach because he's coached them before, but my sense is they'll move Alex Tanney up. Nothing official yet.
Right.
But the one we know has been in the works for 2 weeks at least, if not longer, is Brian Johnson. And he also was a guy that a lot of teams like because when this we could debate who deserves the most credit for the development of Brian Johnson, of Hurts, Brian Johnson, Steichen, whoever you want to give it to. When a team has got this prolific offense, the quarterback has a breakout season, quarterback coach is going to get attention. That's the way
that's the way it's going to be. Now, if you're seeing interviews, I believe the Eagles still have to conduct, by Rooney Rule, interviews. Even though Brian Johnson is black, I believe the Rooney Rule says that you have to interview a minority candidate from outside your organization, which is why it might take a few days before the announcement is made that Brian Johnson is the offensive coordinator. In fact, they're probably, knowing the Eagles, going to wait until they have their entire coaching staff, all like from offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, any changes they might make in the next week or two. They'll probably wait for a while. So it doesn't
always
mean,
do.
We'll be able to report it, but it'll wait for a while.
Yeah, they don't piecemeal. You're 100% right. It's kind of annoying. See, the Panthers are like announcing like every guy they hire. That Parks Frazier was on Wednesday. He was named the passing game coordinator. They announced that. Some team, in fact, they were announcing interviews. The Buccaneers have announced every interview. Of the 50 guys they've had interview for the OC job.
I actually like it that they don't, because then, like, when you and I go to the combine, right, and we see somebody wearing an Eagles shirt that we didn't know, and we say, "Hey, what's up with that?" And they're like, "Oh, I just the new defensive assistant to the secondary coach." We're like, "Oh, okay, cool," and we get to break that in the news,
Hey, don't give her.
And we'll be like, "Well, how long have you been that?" And they'll be like, "Oh, for like 3 weeks now." And it's just they haven't announced it yet.
That actually has happened before. In fact, if you remember at the Senior Bowl, you would see a coach wearing a new polo shirt. I'm like, wait a minute, why is he? Wait, he was just hired by this team.
Yeah.
Okay, just like you said.
That happened to me and Tim McManus at the Senior Bowl when Dave Phipp was hired by Chip. We found him walking around with an Eagles shirt on, and we're like, well, that's weird. And the Eagles wouldn't confirm it. So what do? Me and McManus camp out at the time by the Packers and wait for Philbin, because he was coaching the Packers at the time. Joe Philbin to come out. Yeah. And we don't even ask Joe to confirm it. We say, Joe, can you tell us about what to expect from a new Eagles special teams coordinator, Dave Phipp? And he's like, "Oh, you guys are gonna love Phip," and he starts giving us these great quotes, and we're like,
A
"Yep, that's the
champ.
confirmation we were looking for."
Good job out of you. I do remember you guys did that. I don't know why,
Yeah.
but I just remember.
And we had talked to Phip.
Yeah.
Me and Tim talked, and he goes, "Guys, I love you guys are nice
Yeah.
guys. We had a call. He's like, I can't confirm it for you." And we're like, "But
Sure.
Dave, we could literally take a picture of you right now with our
Yeah.
phones, and you have an Eagle shirt on." He said, "You're free to do that, but I can't confirm it for you. There's this like policy." And we're like, "Don't worry, we'll figure it out."
That's awesome.
But no, that is so yeah, expect it'll be a little bit before the Eagles make announcements, and then you'll probably see interviews there. But like we're sensing, Brian Johnson will be that guy, especially if
He's
teams are
definitely the
calling and
guy.
they're saying save it.
Yeah, he's definitely.
Yeah. So as for defense, the same thing that we're hearing, that because we know how much they like and respect Denard Wilson. In fact, someone organizationally told me, like, this is what Howie does, right? We've seen the pattern for the last few years where he doesn't just Howie and Nick, Howie and Nick, they go out and try to get good veteran position coaches and assistants, because they know if they lose a guy, they don't want to have to promote someone who's not ready. They want people that they already feel are future coordinators. So if you remember, Denard Wilson was a guy who was the same position. He was the defensive backs coach for the Jets. And he was able to come to the Eagles because there was a regime change going on with the Jets, and they were able to get a good veteran DBs coach.
Oh, by the way, we had reported that back then that the Jets thought he was staying, and they were kind of miffed. Their indication they got from him was that he was not going to leave. He was going to stay with Saleh.
Mhm.
And then the next thing you know, he said he was going to the Eagles because they. So the reason why I bring this up is they really respected him. They thought of the former staff. He was one guy they really wanted to keep, who had a lot of upside to move up. So yeah, now if they decide to go outside the organization, I mentioned this on Twitter on Sunday. Sean Desai, who was the Bears defense coordinator for at least a year. I know they were really happy with him. He's a Fangio guy.
Yes.
He's now the Seahawks associate head coach / defense. For those of you who know the Temple program, he also coached there. He's been around for a while. Very good coach. Then now, if they lose anyone, what we've heard is the probable one, if they lose anyone, would be Nick Rollis, who's very close to Gannon. He hired him with the Eagles. He would be high on his list, probably for defense coordinator. And I don't know, he's so young, 28. I don't know if he called the plays, but he knows the defense inside and out, and that's kind of what we've heard is he would be a target. If anybody leaves, it would be him. I don't know who else knows John, because I looked I ran it by people and they said, "Oh yeah, that would be the guy who would leave."
Yeah, they're close. I knew that he brought him over because they
Yes.
coached together in Minnesota. I did not realize that they were like really tight. They have a
Okay.
really good relationship. So I'll be the first to admit, I think when that hire was made, we had some major like, whoa, this kid is young, and this is a linebacker group that has no draft talent. At the time, it was what? It was Edwards, who was undrafted, and who was the linebacker last? Oh, it was. I mean, they'd signed Eric Wilson, and there was another Sean Bradley. Like, they did not have a ton of talent, right? This is
No.
pre Kaiser White. It's pre drafting of Nakobe Dean, and really before TJ Edwards really exploded up this year. So we were concerned, right? Such a young kid, but he did a good job. All the
He did.
linebackers played fairly well.
Yeah, he did a really good job. Edwards absolutely flourished around him, so that's a really good story. So we'll see what happens there, but that would be it. We'll learn more about kind of what the plan is with Wilson. With Wilson, if they keep Denard Wilson, they would definitely keep the same scheme. If they hired Desai, he would run the same scheme. But depending on who they bring in or don't bring in, that'll determine whether they keep the Fangio scheme. So many teams run it. It's I know there's some people say, well, how good is this guy? I forgot. Well, I knew he was the defense coordinator for the Super Bowl team for the Niners. He also was the Panthers in the mid '90s. He was. I know Bill Pulling
Linebackers
told
coach.
me. he actually was the defense coordinator for the Panthers when they
Oh, okay.
got off that incredible start.
Right.
He ran its 34 front. In fact, I laughed when he interviewed for the Niners. I'm like, there's no way in hell that now again he interviewed, coached them in 2012 to the Super Bowl as a D coordinator, but he just recently interviewed with the Niners. I'm like, there's no way he's taking that job. They run a wide nine with Chris Kusarek. I don't know why he's even interviewing for it. They don't run a scheme. It makes no sense, and that was never going to happen. And one thing before we get started on tape, just understand. I know people are like, well, why couldn't the Eagles keep him? As you mentioned to start the show here, kind of the timing with Gannon, Eagles didn't know that Gannon was really in play.
Right.
And Vic had verbally agreed a week and a half ago, as I understand it, with the Dolphins. You don't back out of verbal agreements. It's really bad when coaches do that stuff. They get a bad reputation. I get Vic's in the 60s. He's over it, all that stuff. But you get a bad reputation in the coaching business. We remember the guy who backed out. He agreed, was it DB's coach job with Sirianni's staff last
Yeah,
year?
I don't remember the kid's name, but I remember he backed out of the job. Yeah.
And he must have had like 8 different college jobs. And we'd said this is not good when you do that.
Right.
He kept bouncing around and like when you're here, when you're there, trying to move up. But when you keep doing it, you get a bad reputation. Literally, a guy verbally agreed, and 24 hours later, he backed out.
Right. I
So
remember that.
yeah, but that's it.
Yeah, that did. You're right. Because listen, the reason why Vic Fangio was around the team as a consultant, and then especially these 2 weeks leading up to the Super Bowl, was because at the time, and this is what I was told, at the time, they didn't know what was going on with Gannon, and Gannon didn't know he was going to get called last second here by the. I was told Gannon thought he wasn't going to get anything by the couple days before the Super Bowl, and so Vic Fangio, who is definitely there because Howie was looking at Vic as a potential replacement if he lost Gannon. At that point, Gannon looks like Gannon staying. As you just mentioned, Vic's like, well, I'm all right. I'm going to take a job that's offered to me, which is Miami. And then Gannon winds up becoming all of a sudden a guy on the list. I mean, it sounded like Houston for Gannon weeks before the Super Bowl. That didn't happen. They hired D'Amico, and then you didn't hear much. And then, bam, Arizona came out of nowhere, kept him there, interviewed him, and then he's their head coach the next day. So you sort of feel for the organization, right? Howie, the franchise, the fans who would have loved to seeing Vic just slide right in there and be the defensive coordinator. And that's really sort of what the vision there was, but it just weird things happen, man. It's just like how they lost Frank Reich when McDaniels, like, right. He nixed on the job in Indianapolis, and then all of a sudden they needed an offensive coordinator.
Think about this. DiFilippo and Reich get jobs in 24 hours within each other. The Eagles, they just back then in 17, it just kind of snowballed because they could have kept John to replace. See, the thing is, the Vikings offered him the OC job. The Eagles didn't know that they're going to lose Frank Reich. They would have kept John as they would have promoted him to OC. It's unfortunate because didn't work out for John with Minnesota, but timing is everything in this business. It's very strange sometimes. I'm not saying Gannon would not have gotten the job or had interest in the Cardinals, but it's awfully convenient that he happened to be in Arizona. I mean, come on.
Yeah. It's very odd. And by the way, just on Sean Desai, I mean, a really, really respected defensive. That's if that winds up being a guy they bring in an interview and have to make a decision between that's kind of a tough call. I mean, you've got Denard Wilson. He's been there. He deserves it. But the reputation of Sean Desai is going to be hard to kind of overlook when you're making that decision because people like Sean Desai.
Well, look, he's also been a D coordinator before running the Fangio scheme.
Exactly. That's
another Chicago.
Yeah, it's another element that makes him hard to say no to.
Yeah, and I on your point, I know talking to coaches over the years, they get it when they'll bring someone who's more experienced than themselves, but they don't like it. They feel sometimes slighted by that stuff. I'm glad you brought that up because that does happen. Just talking to coaches over the years, I'm not saying Wilson would be how he would handle it if that happens, but we'll see what they do. There's nothing imminent. There's no decision that's done yet, but they've got time. But generally, these things are wrapped up well before the combine because what you want these coaches sitting with each other. It's very rare to get any coach. In fact, the Eagles remember Gunter Brewer?
Yes, the wide receivers coach.
Yeah, he got hired at the combine back in whatever year that was, and obviously didn't work out at all.
Yeah,
Uh, but it's just rare for that to happen.
definitely. All right, so I guess we'll also stay updated on linebackers coach if Nick Rallis winds up going
Yeah,
to Arizona, and of course, I think Kevin Patullo is someone we'll have to see if Shane Steichen has any interest in it. Like if Brian Johnson's going to be the OC, then maybe either Steichen or Gannon will look at Patullo, the pass game coordinator, as
sure,
someone to bring in. So we'll keep our eyes on that
sure,
as well.
sure. Yeah.
All right, let's get into the tape breakdown of that Super Bowl. I know it's going to be painful for some, but we got good stuff. Look. You really want to know what happened and why it happened. There's a lot of guesstimating going on. There's a lot of things we've heard people say about the game, like so and so should have done this and so should have done that. And look, we've talked to the people, we've seen the tape, so we'll have better answers. But first, we want to take a moment to talk about our friends at Flow Blend. Nate and the great people at FlowBlend have created CBD pouches designed to boost energy, focus, and improve your mood. But their main focus is to help people quit nicotine. If you don't believe us, just check out all the reviews that customers have left telling their story on how FlowBlend helped them quit. It's all on their website at flowblend.com. They've got a 4.8 out of 5-star rating, and FlowBlend's offering a 20% off for all listeners who use the promo code Inside the Birds. That's one word, Inside the Birds promo code at flowblend.com. All orders over $49.99 include free shipping, and all orders ship within 24 hours. Flowblend created a first of its kind nootropic pouch that was crafted with ingredients known to boost focus, mood, and strength. The pouches are called Formula One, and they come in 3 different flavors. The founder of FlowBlend used to work wildland fires and saw how hard guys would push to get the job done. Formula One pouches are a great tool to be at your best when it matters most. All right, so let us talk about the Eagles' offense against the Chiefs' defense. Now, we'll get very into the wool here on Jalen Hurts, like throws, decisions. If you take a macro look at it, he was pretty freaking brilliant for a
He's
guy
really good.
playing in his first Super Bowl.
Played very well.
You know, I know some Chiefs sources who were blown away by how good he was. Like they were like he was special. They were just really impressed. I don't know how you couldn't be. I mean, the numbers and look, I mean, say it. So we may talk about a certain play here and there that, you know, he could have gone there or he missed that. That's
Sure.
we'll get into it, but we know that also in every game there's throws that are missed or guys that were open here and there. But in general, you leave this game, you've now seen the final check, right, in the box of Jalen Hurts. If this is the Jalen Hurts you're getting for the next 5-10 years,
Absolutely,
should be back in the Super Bowl.
because it matters to him. Upbringing with a father, being a coach, all this stuff matters. It just matters. He's so serious about his job. I love how it's like steely-eyed, man. Remember you asked me, it was definitely, because I know this has been a big media situation narrative, like, okay, how's he going to handle the pressure? You know, you asked me the question, you and I discussed it on our pregame show, and I said I think he's not going to miss a beat. I think he'll handle the pressure. And that fumble that he had was clearly on him. That could happen to anybody. It's only one play. Look at how well he played after that.
Right. And it says a lot that on the very next play, when they got the ball back, Sirianni ran him on a keeper off left tackle, I believe. I mean, you talk about, you know, right into the traffic, right into the heart of the Chiefs defense after he fumbled, and he comes right back, ball in his hand on a carry. And I think he had a pretty big gain on that. So that was a fantastic comeback for him from that fumble. Hurt, no doubt. And when you lose by a possession, every mistake that you made counts. But in the macro, it was a great game.
Yes. Oh, look, when I said on the post game show, I said he played very well. I was just going by the early, what we saw, and just talking to a couple of people that were at the game from an NFL standpoint. But when you get an idea of what the tape looks like, then you find out why he was so good. But the thing that you cannot tell off TV, I couldn't tell. Apparently, the holes from coaching tape were not. He ran his vision of, like, he looked like a running back in this game running the football, because the running backs did not run well at all. They just didn't have the holes. Well, his holes were not great. He just He might have went right and then saw the hole open left. He took his running to another level. This was not one of those games where their offensive line dominated to give him big holes to run through. He made up for it. He ran with great vision. That's the stuff a couple people gave me. They were very impressed with his ability to run right, then cut left, or vice versa. There were a couple plays where maybe he didn't throw it to the right guy. But the funny thing is he still completed it. And then there was I need to get clarification on this. There was a play in the 3rd and 11. It was a Gainwell third quarter. It was he ran shallow across the middle, across.
Yep.
I don't know why. I know they had to clear out routes to get him singled up, and then but what happened is Bolton left his man and got him. Bolton had an unbelievable game.
Bolton was amazing. Yeah,
he's really good. Number 32, wearing a run back.
Really good.
But,
yep.
I don't know why they ran that play. You would think they'd throw it downfield. Now, someone told me that if Hurts would have not dropped his eyes, they would have had Brown for a touchdown. But my only issue is if the play was I don't know what the play call was, so it's hard for me to criticize Hurts. I try not to criticize when I don't know what the play call is. And the guys that I talk to sometimes know exactly what the call is because they could tell they played in the league.
Right.
For the most part, where they play college football.
Was there pressure on that? I thought that there was a free rusher.
Not that one.
Not that one? Okay.
No. He Hurts every once in a while this season, and he obviously made a big jump on this because last year he would drop his eyes and he'd perceive pressure when it wasn't there. He had a game or two like that late in the regular season where he dropped his eyes occasionally. But he didn't do that this game. He was the thing I want to mention this was Steichen leaving. Their connection in terms of play call and quarterback was absolutely phenomenal. I don't know about again, I don't know who's going to call plays, whether it's Brian Johnson or Sirianni, but that's something to watch because with Josh Allen losing Brian Daboll, that was a major problem this past season. I know Allen's numbers were very similar to the year before, but there was something missing in their offense with Brian Daboll.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Just we'll revisit this in the summer. We'll take a look at how the offense looks when we go to training camp. We'll talk to people, but just keep an eye on that, folks. That to me is the potential issue.
I do wonder, going back to the Gainwell catch and it being thrown short like that, if they were thinking 2-down territory there. It's hard on 3rd and 11 to get the first down against that defense.
So. Yeah,
you got to throw it longer. I think maybe they expected him to do a little bit of a catch and run. Again, sometimes the defense just does better. I would have put my money on him to be able to turn around and at least get 3 more yards out of that. But Bolton did such a great job of tackling him on the spot that they put him in a punting situation. By the way, that was a tough decision. I mean, I think even if they went for it there, I wouldn't have crushed Sirianni for it. I was thinking about it at the time, thinking that you're going to need points,
Yeah.
Was that the punt then that led to the big return?
No.
No. Okay.
This was no. This was in Chiefs territory.
Right.
I just was told that one person, I only talked to one person about that play and said, go take a look at the all 22. So I looked at it and I'm not smart enough to know because the game was clearly open, but Bolton left his guy and they rallied to the ball and got him.
Yep.
But nevertheless, let's move on from that. Hurts was fantastic. Really good. Like, it's certainly one of his best games. But I've said this whole season, he's so aggressive throwing the football. And the pass to, I had to see it. I watched the all 22 on Wednesday, I think it was. The pass to first of all, the pass to Quez Watkins, if you notice, if you get to see it all 22, the guy's coming right at him, the defender, and he turns his body, but he smartly threw it out there for Watkins to go get. Watkins does not track the ball very well. It's a problem. He cannot be their third receiver. I know he's not technically anymore. Pascal took his job, but he's just not dependable. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
You got to get that call. Get that ball, man. That's a great throw. You got to get that. I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, it did come out that he's been playing with a shoulder injury.
He said
but,
that,
I mean, the ball's in his hand. I know.
Exactly. You gotta, but it's not just that it's in his hands. There are guys who track the ball. AJ Brown's obviously elite tracking the football. We'll get to that in a minute. But overall, Quez has got to be better. But just very briefly on the running backs, the holes were not there. We were told by multiple people. They got Sanders. One guy told me that Sanders had got his body turned. He could not turn upfield. That the O-line did not, they let too much penetration into the backfield. That's not good.
Mm-hmm.
That's what
They
happened.
also, I mean, they were facing a lot of heavier boxes. You saw Spags try to put six
Yes.
when they played the
Yes.
RPO, like we talked about, maybe the Bears would do or the Bucks did in the playoffs last year. They brought guys up and forced, you could still get double teams out of it, but it makes it a lot
Yeah.
harder. Yeah,
And by the way, Hurts beat it though. That's the crazy thing. Hurts
sure.
is running so marvelous. Like they got to the backfield and he make a guy miss and he cut there and cut here. So that was good. AJ Brown was amazing. Devontae was amazing. And I got to tell you, that throw, it's another throw I had to watch the L-22. I know the protection was fantastic. The pass
Mm-hmm.
to Goddard
Mm-hmm.
was unreal. A couple guys told me at the game who sat like 30-yard line or 40-yard line said they were happy to be on. One guy said he was on that side because you had to see it to believe it. Because you're like, is he really going to throw this? And he threw it. And he said, yeah, he had protection, but man, that is a hard throw to make. That it has to be perfect.
Mm.
And this is where we are with Hurts. I mean, yeah, does he see the haters, the Hurts haters, they won't give him credit because the offensive line is so great. But as I said repeatedly this season, he wasn't making these throws last year, people. This is the difference between Hurts in 21, where he was inaccurate occasionally.
Mm-hmm.
Mechanics were not as good. And give the coaches credit. The work they did with this kid, and obviously he worked his ass off, phenomenal in this past offseason because that's how he made the jump.
Sometimes I even look at him at his decisions that might quote unquote seem like the wrong decision. And I look at it differently now because I've seen him play at a high level all year and I understand more what his aim, like for example, on the first drive of the game, they run a play action and he has Goddard wide open in the middle of the field. I think he saw it. It's not that you remember in the past we were told he had trouble seeing things and
Yeah.
the clearer picture, and he's trying to bail. But I'm positive he saw it. But what he did, he threw it to AJ Brown down the left sideline instead. And if you remember, Brown caught it just out of bounds.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It was amazing that he caught it. It was really well placed, but it just was one of those things. The coverage was tight. So I'm looking at that and I'm like, I get it here. Yes, he had Goddard wide open over the middle, but where if he catches it, he gets a big gain, but he also, the safety comes and makes a play on him. Or I'm going to give AJ Brown one-on-one on the outside a shot to make a play, which AJ Brown's made all year long. And if he just gets a step on him, that's a touchdown. See, I think I like that mentality. It's in the last year you wondered if like maybe he's just not going to the right guy. And this time we've seen enough to say he's giving his receiver a chance to make a play, because what did we say they would do against these Chiefs cornerbacks? They were going to try to attack them. And if you make that connection there the right way, then it's a touchdown. And it was like a fraction outside. It's just one of those things that didn't work, but I like the aggressive there. And I like the mentality on that.
And he's doing another nugget for you. I was told that he's doing a much better job of getting to the right shoulder. Like last year, it would be behind the guy. Low. We saw a little bit of this season, but not very much compared to last year. It might be behind the guy. He's throwing with some anticipation, but he's throwing with much better timing to the correct shoulder away from the defender. He's like really getting good at that. And this is the growth that you have in this scheme. He's getting it. And again, credit to the coaches. We've given Hurts credit all season. We're not giving the coaches enough credit. I mean, you gotta, whatever work that they're doing has been fantastic.
Yep.
And
Oh, by the
Brian
way,
Johnson.
on your point on that ball placement, think about how many balls were caught by Eagles with Chief hands, wrists, arms, like right there.
Yeah.
If Jalen wasn't as
They were on
pinpoint
him.
accurate as he was, even if it was just a slight bit off, you're talking about a lot more pass breakups and maybe some interceptions. So he was so pinpoint. That was really the brilliance of it. I mean, his ball placement was fantastic.
Yeah, and give the offensive line credit. I know they didn't do a great job for the run, but boy, did they protect him well. And he moved around. He manipulated the pocket. He's getting better at that. That was not, obviously if you graded everything that he does, that probably would be lower. But he's getting better at manipulating the pocket, which is not easy to do.
Right.
The pocket movement, the subtle pocket movement. So that'd be pretty. Goddard played really well. I just wish they would have got him down the seam more, because the Chiefs changed their coverages up a lot. They Spags, as I think you said. I guess you talked to someone who knows Spags' defense, and you're saying he throws a lot of crap at you.
Mm-hmm.
They sure as hell did, and I got to give Hurts credit, man. He did not flinch.
No, No,
He's
there
so
were
good.
free rushers a couple too many times again.
Yes.
That's Jeff Stoutland has to work this out in the offseason. He's a great coach, we know that, but too many times we've seen free rushers here. That's a communication issue. It looks very bad when you have two offensive linemen blocking one guy, one offensive lineman blocking nobody, and then a free rusher about to hit the quarterback. That's got to get shored up in the offseason. I'm going to be on that next year in training camp. And I think we may have seen the last of Miles Sanders. We'll see. The market will dictate
I don't
that,
know.
but that was not his
He got
best game.
popped on that one play.
He
He
did.
got popped hard. I mean, he got smacked in the first play.
All right, we'll move on to defense, right? That's everything with offense.
Yep.
First, we're going to tell you about our friends at PHL Sports Nation. They are enhancing the fans' experience of their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at phlsportsnation.com and on Twitter at PHL Sports Nation. Let's also pause to hear from our friends at Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schulter, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
All right, if you stop in at Sky Motor Cars in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Jeff sent you. You will get a great deal. All right, we mentioned this defensively in the postgame pod. I don't know if we have much more to say about it. The pass rush wasn't there, whether it was slipping, maybe the offensive tackles for the Chiefs. A couple of people told me that they were surprised how well Wiley played. So maybe they just saved their best for the Super Bowl, but clearly pass rush, Adam, which is what has fueled the Eagles defense all year long, was not there.
All right, so they played their normal front.
Yep.
They played like they normally did because they thought naturally they'd be able to get a pass rush. This is not, I'm not an Eagles homer. People know this. We have to say it because we don't want to be biased. People think we're biased. Two people told me flat out Reddick could not get any footing. I know he was outspoken about it. He simply do you ever like try to run in like muddy, I don't know if you played touch football growing up, flag.
Yeah.
And you played in mud and you kind of like you try to get a field, then you try to stop and you can't.
Yep.
Where you slip.
Yep.
There are so many instances I didn't watch it. I was told by two people I trust that it was really bad. He just could not get off the ball. They've never seen him look like this.
Right.
And it is what it is. I mean, again, hey, it is what it is. No,
yeah,
I don't know.
Chris Jones also struggled with it too. He slipped a couple of times.
Yeah.
It impacted both teams, no doubt.
Sure,
and there was a play where Pacheco actually had a wide open hole to run through. He got 6 yards and he just fell. Like he would have had 16 yards. So
what an embarrassment for the NFL.
Yeah, it was bad.
I know they haven't put a statement out, and George Thomas at the sod got him, and he's like the best in NFL history. Well, he should be ashamed.
Definitely.
This is supposedly he's retiring again, but I don't know what the hell happened. It's embarrassing. So okay, here's what we got. Defensive line cannot get home. Same for the outside, the stand-up guys. Jordan Davis got moved in this game, stood up again. He tackles did not play well versus the run. TJ, see what happened is they did a decent job. They didn't do anything special against Kelsey. They just made sure they had someone around him. They didn't bracket him. They didn't trail him. They didn't really do anything. They just made sure that they didn't forget about him, because sometimes you always ask, why is Kelsey wide open sometimes? Because teams kind of lose track of him. The Eagles didn't lose track of him. They didn't stop him, but he didn't go off like a lot of us thought he would.
Right.
That's maybe why the game was as close as it was. But here's what they did to negate the rush. The grass got them, but the big thing is 3-step and 5-step out. Very few 7-step drops. They played the quick game. It defeated. This is what would beat the wide 9 with Schwartz when we would complain when he was coaching. And why don't you press? Why don't you press? They did a little bit. Did a little bit of pressing, not enough. Got to move them up. This is my one issue with Gannon in this game. I wish he would have. I get the sense that they don't like, their corners don't like pressing. I remember Gannon explaining in 2021, it's up to his whether they want to do it or not. And apparently Nelson was not comfortable with it, so they didn't do it much. I can't speak for Bradbury, but again, based on what we know, it's generally it's a mixture of communication. What do you want to do? They went with a lot more man coverage. That's one of the reasons why we said in the pregame they should not have a problem with these receivers, is because they're not great. They're very average. And if you would have told me that Mahomes would throw for 182, I'd say, oh, the Eagles will win this game, no problem.
Right.
Oops. He only completed 21 passes, only made 27 attempts. So it's because Pacheco ran wild in the second half. I don't know what to tell you, other than the Eagles' run defense sucked in the third quarter.
Yeah. Yeah, their run defense was bad, and then that opened up for the pass defense to be bad, and then of course, it doesn't help when you get a punt return down to the 5.
Oh, terrible. One thing I would say, I don't buy that their defensive tackles had problems with the grass.
Yeah,
I just thought that I'm going to give the Chiefs offensive line credit. They Tooney, Creed Humphreys is an absolute stud, one of the best centers in football. So
Yep.
They did a good job of double teams. They just got them. I mean, give them credit. That's not a Gannon problem.
No.
Sometimes players get beat.
We have seen the interior of the defensive line struggle against the run, especially against good offensive. Well, we've seen them struggle against some bad. I mean, the Washington doesn't have a good interior offensive line, and they were able to get them on them. So this is a really good offensive line. The areas they struggled were outside, the tackles. Inside, like you mentioned, Creed's great, Thuney's great, and the right guard's pretty good too, whose name is all of a sudden escaping.
Trey Smith.
Yeah, Trey Smith. Yeah, that's a really, really, really good offensive line, and they asserted their dominance. And as to your point, our your buddy Warren Sharp tweeted that Gannon blitzed more. He blitzed Mahomes on 33% of his dropbacks, which is one of the highest. So for people saying, "Oh, well, he didn't blitz enough," or "Oh, he didn't play it. He played too much soft zone." No, he played a lot of man and he blitzed a lot. It just didn't work.
Didn't get home.
He adjusted. He just didn't adjust well.
And Andy adjusted. He said, "Okay, we have no chance to get the ball downfield. Get it out of his hands quickly."
Right.
And he did a good job. I thought you made a great point. The experienced play caller beat the inexperienced defense coordinator. That's just the way it is.
Yes, totally.
And he got him.
All right. That's going to do it. I think we've pretty much wrapped it up. Yeah. I look forward to the next one Monday morning, because there'll probably be some news. It's going to be a big offseason of news for the Philadelphia Eagles, and we will have it all covered. So that'll do it for this edition of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. As always, we thank you for flying with us inside the birds.